Hello and welcome to episode 4 of He-View as we continue our retrospective look at the classic 1980s animated series of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's been about, 12 months now since I last did an episode review from the show, so I'd better get a move on with covering some more. Especially considering that there's 2 seasons of 65 episodes each to get through, and some episodes of this show are better than others. But luckily today, we're going to take a look at one of my personal favourite episodes, the Dragon Invasion. This was the 4th episode in the series, and it was originally broadcast back on the 29th of September 1983. We kick things off on a rocky, pointy cliff, with Beast Man and Skeletor stealing some giant dragon eggs. These guys must be planning one hell of an omelette. Skeletor also has possession of a mystical item called the Dragon's Pearl, which Merman originally stumbled upon in the slime swamp. But as Skeletor explains,
"The fool traded it to me for Eternian silver."
Honestly, don't you know a dragon pearl when you see one, Merman? Clearly, like with the Diamond Ray of Disappearance or the Crimson Pearl, this is another ancient and mystical bauble that the baddies have gotten their hands on and intend to use for their ill purposes. In theory, Beastman has the power to control the dragons, but when the Mother Dragon arrives, she is so infuriated that he cannot command her. Beastie actually defies his boss and makes a run for it, so Skeletor has to use his magic to drop her off a cliff so they can take the eggs. I suppose that makes Skeletor the new Mother of Dragons, so I guess at some point he's going to be getting frisky with Jon Snow. Needless to say, he's not in the mood for dealing with Beastman, who actually stands up to his boss for a brief moment in this episode.
What makes you think you can always order me around?
Now move!
Over at the Royal Palace, it's time for dinner, and things are getting a little bit weird as Orko pulls entire cooked turkeys out of his robes before practically inhaling an entire leg. This probably explains why Teela is sticking with a salad. I mean, I can't say I blame her. Would you really want to eat anything that came out of Orko's robes? King Randor makes an insane observation that if there were 2 Orkos, then he could eat twice as much. Clearly the king has finally taken leave of his senses, because at times, having 1 Orko is bad enough. As expected, Orko takes this idea far too literally, and soon there are 4 Orkos scoffing turkey legs and arguing with each other in the banqueting hall. Yes, Orko created multiple clones of himself solely because having several Orkos will help him eat more food. That is an actual thing that happened in this cartoon. If this sounds like an absolute nightmare for He-Man fans, well, it is. But to be honest, I'll gladly take 4 Orkos over those 4 scientists from Primus that we saw in the New Adventures of He-Man. Oh God, will you shut up? Adam manages to stop the 4 Orkos from quarrelling and actually work together because...
when things look bad, teamwork's the answer.
So then the 4 Orkos do, I'm not entirely sure what they're doing here. I mean, they make a nice star appear, but what was the point of that? After all this, the royal court are almost thankful that dinner is interrupted by the arrival of a dragon. Somehow, a dragon's egg shows up, hatches, and turns from a baby dragon into a full-sized one in an instant. And of course, it's that's giving the royal palace a good old toasting with its fire breath. Teela takes the king and queen to safety and tells Adam to get the guards, which gives him the chance to rush off and turn into He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe.
I don't think I care for baby dragons.
This is one of the most dramatic transformation sequences we've seen so far, as Adam actually gets buried by rubble at one point. But of course, the power of Grayskull cannot be stopped by a mere collapsing roof. He-Man, Battlecat and Teela all work together to fend off the dragon. Ram-Man also turns up and attempts to use his flying headbutt on the dragon, but it turns out that this oversized lizard is a tad more intelligent than Colossal from the previous episode, and Rami ends up colliding with a wall. He's not the brightest Master of the Universe, is he? Still, at least he finally gets to speak in this episode.
Oh, that's the hardest dragon I ever rammed.
What you get up to in your private life is entirely up to you, Ram-Man. Anyway, He-Man throws the dragon about 5 feet, which distracts it long enough for Man-at-Arms to hit it with his new stasis ray and freeze it in place for a couple of hours. A stasis ray that Man-at-Arms has very conveniently just invented right at this very moment.
Where could that dragon have come from?
Well, Beast Man has the power to control animals, and Skeletor controls Beast Man.
I would say that this could be an outstanding feat of deduction on He-Man's part, but you've got to bear in mind, this is only the 4th episode of the show so far, and we've only seen about, 20 or so people in all of Eternia, so they aren't really many other options. I doubt that it's the buff gardener from the previous episode that's responsible for this. Hey, did they ever go back and save him from being turned to stone? Or is he still there looking like a garden ornament? Back at Snake Mountain, Skeletor is very pleased with himself.
I'm so powerful I even impress myself.
Beast Man isn't impressed though, and he's growing ever more resentful of his boss.
But you don't impress me. Someday I'll show you what power really is.
Did you say something?
No, nothing, Skeletor.
Just saying, Beastman, it is you that's currently controlling all these dragons, not Skeletor. If you were going to stab him in the back and overrule him, now's the time to do it. Oh, in case you were wondering, it turns out that Skeletor has used growth serum to make the dragons grow at super speed in less than a minute.
And if you think that's magic, wait till you see what I do with the Dragon Pearl.
Meanwhile, dragons are turning up all over Eternia. Stratos arrives to let Teela know that his homeland, Avian, has also been attacked. So it's bloody just as well that Man-at-Arms made more than one stasis ray, right? Although he can't have made that many, as rather than using one in this particular scene, He-Man just rams this giant rock up a dragon's arse to trap it in a cave.
This dragon hunting is tiring business.
Now, I'm afraid there's no time for rest.
And the trouble is, there's still more out there. Whilst He-Man and his friends are busy battling the dragon invasion, Skeletor uses the opportunity to break into Castle Grayskull, and he's assembled some of the familiar crew from previous episodes to help him with this. There's Panther, Evil-lyn, Trapjaw, and where did this large Chinese gentleman come from? So folks, this is Jitsu, who is making his one and only appearance in the cartoon here. He's supposed to be a martial arts master, but mostly he's a master of not appearing in any other episodes of the series. This is it for him. Skeletor focuses Evil-lyn's magic through the Dragon Pearl, which magnifies her power 100-fold. They zap the Sorceress of Grayskull inside the Pearl and begin draining her powers, although at least she's able to use her telepathy to call to He-Man for help. And at least she's not inside one of those crystal eggs that Gwyneth Paltrow sells on Goop.
You have trapped the sorceress in the Dragon Pearl.
Yes, at this point Jitsu gets his one and only line in the entire series within this one scene, and it's said in a really stereotypical Asian sounding voice. It's not a great moment for the series. It's probably even worse than the voice of Karate from The New Adventures of He-Man.
Stand still, you coward! Let's see how well you fight using my weapon. Hands!
Oh dear. So, Skeletor can now finally walk into Castle Grayskull without anyone to stop him, and why does Jitsu have the same slouching walk animation as Beast Man? Isn't this guy supposed to be a master of martial arts? Well, anyway, Skeletor then uses the power of the sorceress within the Pearl to set up a force field that can't be broken into from science or sorcery, or from He-Man running headfirst into it.
What in Eternia is going on?
Grayskull has fallen, He-Man. To me!
All looks lost, but then Orko has an idea. Remembering what Prince Adam told him and the other 3 Orkos earlier on in the episode about teamwork being the answer, Orko comes up with an idea to bring all the dragons to Grayskull and use their collective fire breaths to break through the force field.
But Beast Man controls them.
Then we'll control Beast Man.
Ram Man, you okay there, mate? Any chance of a bit of elbow room? He-Man and Teela head right to Snake Mountain to confront Beast Man, who has actually come across as a serious threat in this episode. Whilst in the previous episode He-Man merely picked him up and threw him across a room, this time it takes the combined might of He-Man, Teela and the freeze ray to finally put him down. Why couldn't he have been like this in other episodes? With Beast Man put on ice for the time being, it turns out that the dragons aren't so bad at all once Beast Man's not controlling them. Don't believe me? Well, here's Man-at-Arms with the weirdest line of the entire episode.
Stratos, all the dragons have become friendly.
The heroes round up the dragons and have them all breathe fire at the force field until it gives way. Hey, if teamwork really is the answer, why didn't Orko bring the other 3 Orkos back to help out? Or were they still too full of the turkey dinner? So now we get a huge throwdown with evil-lyn, Trapjaw, Panther and Jitsu taking on Teela, Ram-Man, Stratos, Man-at-Arms and Battle Cat. This is the type of battle royale that kids would no doubt have recreated with the toys back in the day. Jitsu closes out his brief, useless career by getting utterly annihilated by Ram-Man in a single move, and Skeletor makes a hasty retreat back to Snake Mountain whilst his underlings are getting beaten up by Team He-Man. You know, despite the bad guys getting possession of Castle Grayskull for quite some time, they don't appear to have done much except for standing around in one room. Shouldn't you lot have been busy looking for those secrets of Castle Grayskull that Skeletor's always going on about? But upon arriving back at Snake Mountain, Skeletor finds that He-Man is still there waiting for him, evidently deciding that he had better things to do around Snake Mountain rather than help out at Castle Grayskull. I imagine he's probably been doing things to proper piss off Skeletor when he gets back, like change the Wi-Fi password, or make a sandwich and not clean up afterwards. Skeletor uses the power of the sorceress, still inside the Dragon Pearl remember, to make himself bigger and stronger than He-Man, but certainly not any smarter, seeing as he immediately falls off the edge of a cliff and needs to be rescued by He-Man. And of course, He-Man saves him, because...
I guess I value life more than you do, Skeletor, even yours.
Well, I value this.
Told you, heart of gold that lad. As if Skeletor hasn't been embarrassed enough, the big mama dragon turns up again, and Skeletor is so startled that he ends up dropping the Dragon Pearl and shrinking back to his normal size, like he was Super Mario being hit by a Koopa. Mamma mia.
Oh no! No!
And it's no wonder he runs away after this. It's not because he was defeated, it's because he's absolutely bloody cringing with embarrassment. Mama Dragon manages to recover the Dragon Pearl for He-Man and then destroys it in order to free the sorceress.
Thank you. Well, let's go home, Zor.
All is well again. Grayskull is out of Skeletor's clutches, and Man-at-Arms has teleported all the dragons back to their mother. Although Orko wishes he'd gotten a baby dragon as a pet. At least until one flies back through the space portal and starts licking him. The episode ends with the goodies once again having a good old chuckle at Orko's expense as the screen fades to black and we get today's moral of the story.
In today's story, Skeletor tried to conquer Eternia by using animals in an evil way. Animals, like all living things, should be treated with kindness and respect. I hope that those of you who have a dog or cat or maybe even a hamster remember that. When we have a pet, we also have a responsibility because they depend on us. But you can be sure of one thing, however much we love them, they return that love and more. Well, time for me to disappear. Bye.
The moral of today's story is that animals, like all living things, should be treated with kindness and respect, and definitely shouldn't be used in an evil plot to try and conquer Eternia. Although there is a massive amount of difference between a pet hamster and a pet dragon Orko, especially when you've got to toilet train the buggers.
That is one big pile of shit.
This was a great episode. Building an episode around dragons gave us a chance to see more of Eternia. We got to hear about where Stratos lives, we got a lot of Skeletor chuckling, Beast Man got a chance to shine after being treated like a human punching bag in the previous episode. The dragons were such a huge threat that He-Man and the Masters of the Universe had to work together early on to deal with them. And at the end of the day, teamwork being the answer when things go wrong is genuinely a good positive message to teach kids. I mean, you would have thought that would have been the moral of today's story really, rather than Orko contemplating on getting a pet. Jitsu being there and being an embarrassing racist stereotype doesn't help the episode, but it doesn't hinder it too much either. This is a good action-packed episode and it's loads of fun. It's also one of the few episodes where Skeletor manages to get inside Castle Grayskull and look like he might actually be triumphant this time. It's also a really good episode for Beast Man as well. Not only does he come across as a serious physical threat to He-Man, but also to Skeletor as well, as he is quietly scheming to potentially get rid of him one day. It's a shame it wasn't like this more often. So yes, this was a very enjoyable episode. Possibly my favourite one that we've covered on the channel so far. Next time on HeView, we'll be looking at The Curse of the Spellstone, featuring fire people, a black blobby thing called the Creeping Horak, Battle Cat getting a great big toy to play with, and Evil-lyn dressing up as an old woman. Sounds good? Well, I'll see you all then, shall I? I'll put the kettle on. Maybe have some turkey sandwiches on standby. Well anyway, that's the end of another little analysis/rant on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you have enjoyed this, then please do leave a like and a comment, and be sure to check out some of my other videos. I have an entire playlist full of He-Man related content. Please also consider sharing this video across your social media platforms, in particular with those that have got anything to do with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and classic 80s cartoons in general. And do be sure to subscribe to the channel as well to see future videos just like this. But for now, thank you very much for stopping by the Big Daddy D Reviews channel, and we'll catch you again next time.